What is Islamophobia? Islamophobia refers to prejudice, discrimination, hostility, or hatred directed toward Islam as a religion and/or toward Muslims as individuals or communities, including those perceived to be Muslim. The term combines Islam with phobia, meaning fear, but in practice it describes not just irrational fear, but a broader set of negative attitudes and behavior. Common definitions. The concept gained wide recognition through the 1997 Runnymede Trust Report, Islamophobia, a challenge for us all, which described it as unfounded hostility towards Islam, and, by extension, fear or dislike of Muslims. This early framing emphasized stereotyping Muslims as a threat, often linked to terrorism or cultural incompatibility. More recent and influential definitions include Runnymede Trust, updated in later reports, e.g., 2017 and 2025. Islamophobia as anti-Muslim racism, a form of racism deeply embedded in societal structures and systems of power, targeting expressions of Muslimness and perceived Muslim identity. All-Party Parliamentary Group (APPG) on British Muslims, rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. UN-related working definitions, e.g., submissions to OHCHR, a fear, prejudice, and hatred of Muslims that leads to provocation, hostility, and intolerance by means of threatening, harassment, abuse, incitement, and intimidation, motivated by institutional, ideological, political, and religious hostility that transcends into structural and cultural racism. Georgetown University's Bridge Initiative, an extreme fear of and hostility toward Islam and Muslims, leading to hate speech, hate crimes, and social political discrimination. CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations, anti-Muslim racism, fear, hatred, or prejudice toward Islam and Muslims that results in patterns of discrimination and oppression. Many sources stress that Islamophobia often intersects with racism, as it targets visible markers, hijab, beard, names, skin color, accent, etc., even when the victims are not practicing Muslims. For example, Sikhs or Arabs, sometimes misidentified. It manifests in individual acts, hate crimes, verbal abuse, workplace discrimination, media stereotypes portraying Muslims as inherently violent, misogynistic, or unassimilable, institutional policies, profiling, bans on religious practices, structural exclusion, barriers in employment, housing, political participation. Important distinction. Most proponents of the term explicitly state that legitimate, evidence-based criticism of Islamic doctrine, texts, practices, or institutions is not Islamophobia. The line is crossed when criticism generalizes to all Muslims, promotes discrimination or hostility against people, is used to justify violating Muslims' rights, criticism, and debates. The term is controversial. Some critics, including academics, politicians, and free speech advocates, argue it conflates criticism of religion, ideology with racism or bigotry against people. It can be weaponized to silence debate about aspects of Islam. For example, women's rights, apostasy laws, violence in tasks. The phobia framing implies irrational fear rather than reasoned disagreement. Alternatives like anti-Muslim hatred or anti-Muslim bigotry are sometimes preferred to avoid disparaging. Others maintain the term remains useful precisely because prejudice against Muslims often blends religious, cultural, and racial elements in ways that ordinary criticism labels don't capture. The United Nations has recognized March 15th as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia since 2022, reflecting growing international concern about anti-Muslim hostility. In summary, Islamophobia describes real patterns of prejudice, and discrimination faced by Muslims. But the exact scope of the term and where it ends and free speech begins remains debated across academic, political, and advocacy circles.